southern Italy, Matera. Pietro Laureano shared some of his research on Matera yesterday, and I'm going to tell you more about Matera and some of the dilemmas and techniques that have been developed or are raging in Matera on historic preservation. So Matera is my, do I have a pointer? Or maybe my mouse? Okay, I've got a mouse. Here is Matera, here in Italy. You recognize the boot. So Matera is deep in the south of Italy. So Matera is in a very isolated location in southern Italy, not near other large cities, and not near very modern locations. Its typical house form is a cave. It's sculpted into the side of a ravine. And these illustrations show you how the caves work. The image on the left, upper left, is a plan. Oh, it's very sensitive. Is a plan showing you how the caves are dug into the cliff, and then they take the material that was dug out and it's built forward. So part of the houses are in the cliff, and part of them are constructed in front of the cliff. And this illustrations maybe helps explain that. So this is what the city looks like. It's a vertical city. There are 12 levels of city, and so it's a series of stairways like a net that stitch the city together. There aren't flat streets. And it's not only small houses, there are churches, there are palaces, it was the ancient city, and so it had all kinds of architecture in it. And here's some photos of what it looked like when it was being lived in. It was in occupation from the Neolithic days through the 1950s. So it has thousands of years of development and occupation. Most of the houses are grouped around communal courtyards, and that's what you're looking at in this photograph. And here are people collecting water. In the 1930s, Mussolini brought water to the city. Before that, people only collected rainwater. This is what, it was farmers mostly that lived there. Even with their animals, this is a pig here, and here is a mule here. And here's a family eating. But in the 1950s, mostly because of politics, but also because of changing living standards, the Italians decided that the people can't live in the caves any longer, that it was too primitive a lifestyle, and that what the bureaucrats said was, there's no amount of technology in the world that can make the caves livable. So we have to move the people out. So they moved them into these modern dwellings. They ended up moving 20,000 people out, and you can see the new city built above the ancient city. The new city was just built on the top of the ridge. And so the abandoned city began to collapse. So in the late 20th century, it started looking like this. So not only were no one living there maintaining it, but then there were some earthquakes, and so the architecture was structurally compromised and things began to fall. And that's when a lot of people got upset because they realized it was a beautiful place. And so its story was reinterpreted and it was reevaluated as a place of art and culture. Meanwhile, it was still collecting garbage, so it was a controversy in the city. Pietro Laureano, who spoke yesterday, made the nomination to UNESCO, and the city became a UNESCO World Heritage Monument. And I put this slide in here so you can see the UNESCO logo on it. And then the restoration program began. So this is a before image, and here is an after image of the same location. So I'll show you again so you can see how it changed. That's before, while it was abandoned. And that's after. It's full of shops and workshops. This is a before and after of a bathroom. It wasn't a bathroom before, it was just a cave before, but it turned into a very fancy tub. And here is a dining room. In fact, there I am having dinner with some people. Many beautiful houses. Now restaurants are in the Sassi. Beautiful bars. Oh, Sassi is the name for the ancient cave zones. There are museums there, history museums, and beautiful art museums, like this one. It's a contemporary art museum in the caves. And the city is now culturally flourishing. Artists are flocking to the city because it's such a beautiful place and such a great place. And there are lots of musicians performing there too. This lower image on the right is a huge cave underground, and there's a theater in there, and you see actors performing. And this is in a fancy hotel. Many fancy hotels are opening up in the Sassi. Here's a swimming pool that's in some cisterns. They turned the cisterns into a swimming pool for this hotel. This is another hotel with a fancy bathroom. This is just a guest room in a hotel. And because the city was inviting tourists to come and there weren't enough rooms for tourists, they encouraged residents to transform their cave homes into bed and breakfasts. This is just one page of 300 that you can stay in, that you can find on Airbnb. And the tourists do come. But especially the tourists who come are cultural tourists, bicyclists, people interested in history and art. Because Matera has defined itself in that way. They don't want mass tourism, they want heritage tourism. And as a result, they've won the European City Capital of Culture for 2019. So, how to get from abandoned to a lively, vibrant city? What they decided to do to save the abandoned city was, first of all, the reason people were taken out was due to lack of hygiene. So that was imperative, how to get clean water into the caves, dirty water out of the caves, how to get electricity to the caves without having the sky full of electric lines, how to get internet into caves. Well, what they did is study the landscape. This is a plan view of the caves. The green road is the only vehicular road there, which Mussolini put in the 1920s or 30s. And what you can see, I'm going to point out the stairways, because everything is stairways. Wherever you see the little lines, those are stairs. So what they decided to do was lift up all the stairs, put services under the stairs, and put the stairs back down. And that way they could get services to every house. They also did a zoning plan for the city to decide where restaurants could go, where shops could go, where workshops could go, which places would be houses, where civic buildings would be. And this is a study. So here's a typical street, which is of course a stairway, and it's been lifted up, and the services are under it now, and you can see with my mouse this square here, which is access to the services. Oops. There's another one here. You can see lots of squares which give you access to the sewage and the clean water and the electricity and the data. And here you can see where they turn up to go into a house. They'll get covered up. This is while work is going on. Then a box is placed there. The box gets covered. And then it gets camouflaged to look like stone, so that every house has access to the services from the street. And you can see more of these squares in the wall that access to the services. So that was the most important thing that allowed the Toxey to be re-inhabited. But in doing so, they necessarily dismantled their water system, the natural water system. And that's a little bit problematic because how sustainable is this city? It's in a dry area. We're in a drying climate. What happens when the city water is no longer available? They had an existing water system, a natural water system. I'm showing this picture. It's a little hard to see. It's actually very hard to see. But we're looking down into a 30-meter deep cavern under the main plaza of the city. And this is one of maybe 10 or more huge caverns where the city used to collect water, rainwater, for the city. It was a natural collection system. Now they've turned it into a place to visit, so they have dismantled their natural water system. And here's another one where they put a mini golf course in the big cistern, which is beautiful and fun, but I just question the sustainability of that when they need water someday and they only have mini golf. And I'm not opposed to change. These images illustrate how change is natural. It's part of the culture. These places, these houses have been changing for thousands of years, but I just think they need to look to the future, and many people do, like Pietro Laureano. Another approach to the restoration was to make a typology of all the houses and all the house forms. And this book does that, and here are a few sample images. These are all the different types of paving in the city, in the ancient city. These are all the different types of stairways in the city. These are all the different types of chimneys in the city. This is a location of all of these elements. And another really important study that was done was an engineering study on how the ancient dwellings were built. This is the intangible heritage, how they were constructed. And this has been a guide for preservationists working there. This is how to build a vault, because some people have forgotten how. And here is this practice in the works. You can see 2 vaults being built here with wooden centering. But not everybody has practiced that. Here you see a concrete vault that was put in place. And this is problematic because it doesn't marry well with the stone. It's harder than the stone, and it probably will eventually lead to problems. That's what you see here. They put in a concrete vault over the stone vault instead of repairing the stone vault with its own technology. And it ended up destroying the vault. It did 2 other problems too. It changed the shape of the roof, and I'll show you in the next image that all the roofs have a little curve to go over the round vault. And this one is straight, so they made that change. And the houses that have this kind of concrete vault are much hotter in the summer because it holds the heat rather than having the air space to ventilate the roof. So this shows you the curve that was lost by using the concrete vault. Another important technique in restoring these buildings is replacing these stones that are eroded away, such as in this building. Some people replace all the stones, and some people replace only the necessary stones, and that more conservative approach is the more desirable one. If you cover over limestone with concrete, which is what happened here, instead of replacing the stone, they just filled it in with concrete. The concrete will not breathe like the stone does. It traps moisture behind it, and then that causes the stone to erode, and the concrete stays there for a while. You can't see the problem developing behind it. Eventually it falls off and the stone is gone. So that's not a good technique. This is an example, it's a little hard to see, it's of an island of concrete with all the stone eroded around it. This is what it looks like when you replace individual stones. This is effective for illustrating how it's done. You just pull out one stone and you put in another. What's better than using a bright white stone, however, is using one that's aged a little bit outside and camouflaged a little bit, like this. Here is, again, an example of where all new stones were used rather than trying to use some of the old stones. Same here on the right, you have all new compared to all old, and it would be preferable to incorporate the old material too. It's part of the history of the place. Here's a very good example of incorporating old and new together. Another technique that's being debated in Toxey is the treatment of the surface. Traditionally, people painted the insides of their houses and sometimes the outsides with white lime. Lime was a disinfectant. Lime brightened the space because they didn't have electricity. And lime also sealed the stone so it didn't drop on them. But people today don't like the look of the lime. And so, even though there are traces of it, this is the house on the bottom, you can see lime. They've seen it, the Toxey, for so many years now without maintenance and with the natural stone that they prefer that. So they're not putting the lime on now. Instead, they're putting clear varnishes. But that doesn't marry well with the stone, and that's causing problems. So they're still debating. They're still trying to figure out what to do. This is a work in progress. One of the great things that's happened with this project is it's recuperated lost technologies. Young people are learning these skills again. This, for example, is a sculptor who works in the Toxey and who repairs the sculpted stone. Here, for example, is one of his pieces. So today the Toxey are alive, the city is thriving, and it doesn't suffer from the brain drain that other cities in the south suffer from. The youth stay here, they work here. And it's a success story, but it's an evolving story. Every time a problem is met, a solution is sought, and the story of Matera is not over. Thank you.
はい、ありがとうございました。 Thank you very much.